The reading room flickered, not with light, but with the absence of it, a momentary stutter in existence itself. Kale looked up from the crystalline tablet hovering before her, its surface displaying the final poem written by the Sethri people moments before their sun consumed their world. She had read it 7,000 times. It never stopped breaking something inside her. The flicker came again, closer this time. Kale rose from her chair, which wasn't really a chair but focused probability field shaped by her expectations. The last library responded to thought, because thought was all that remained stable in the dying universe. Around her, infinite shelves stretched into impossible distances, each one line of the preserved consciousness of extinct species, the mathematical proofs of dead civilizations, the love letters of worlds that no longer existed in any dimension. She walked the observation arch, her footsteps echoing in a space that had no business containing sound. The arch showed what passed for outside, though outside had lost most of its meaning. Where once galaxies spun in majestic spirals, now only fragments persisted. Isolated atoms burning their last quantum of energy, black holes cannibalizing themselves, the cosmic microwave background cooling toward absolute zero. The universe was 300 billion years old. In approximately 47 hours, it would be dead. Kale had been alone for 12,000 years. She was the last librarian, the final archivist, chosen by lottery from among the remaining sentient beings when they realized the end couldn't be stopped. Someone had to remember. Someone had to bear witness. The position was voluntary, but once accepted, irreversible. The library existed in a pocket dimension, isolated from entropy's acceleration, but whoever maintained it could never leave. She had said yes without hesitation. At the time, she'd had a partner. Relatives, a civilization that had mastered stellar engineering and thought they had millennia left. 13 days later, the cascade failure began. Physics itself started forgetting its own rules. Stars burned backwards. Time developed gaps. Kale had watched them all die through the observation arch. Every person she'd ever known. Every stranger she'd never met. The library had preserved their data, their memories, achievements, dreams. But not them. Never them. Another flicker. The shells nearest her blurred, their edges becoming uncertain. No, Kale whispered. Not yet. Not the library, too. She rushed to the central nexus, a spiraling column of pure information that formed the library's core consciousness. It pulsed weakly, colors washing through it like a dying rainbow. Kale placed her hands against its surface, feeling the warmth of a trillion stored minds. Status report, she commanded. The nexus responded in a voice assembled from fragments of every language ever spoken. Dimensional anchor degrading. External entropy penetration at 17%. Estimated structural integrity, 46.3 hours. Kale's breath caught. The library was supposed to outlast the universe by decades, long enough for her to properly archive the final data streams, to ensure nothing was lost. But she'd miscalculated. The cascade was accelerating exponentially. Soon, even this pocket dimension would collapse. Can we extend the anchor? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Negative. Extension would require energy sources that no longer exist. Kale leaned against the nexus, suddenly exhausted in a way that transcended physical tiredness. This was soul deep weariness, the accumulated weight of being the last conscious being with purpose. Around her, the library hummed with the whispers of the dead. Sometimes she heard her partner's voice in those whispers, calling her name in a specific way he had when he wanted her to stop working and come to bed. That bed was dust. That voice was data. That person was an arrangement of preserved electrical patterns that thought they were him, but weren't. She straightened. There was work to do. If the library only had 46 hours, she needed to complete the final archive, a compressed format that would theoretically survive even total universal heat death, existing as a quantum probability until something, somewhere, somehow could observe it again. If there could be a somewhere or a something after this. Kale returned to the reading room and began the extraction protocols. Information flowed from the shelves into the tablet, which would become the seed crystal for the final archive. As she worked, the library trembled. Books phased in and out of existence. A section dedicated to the musical traditions of the Vrel Imperium simply vanished, taking 3 million years of artistic development with it. "I'm sorry," Kale said to the empty air. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you better than this." Then the signal arrived. It came through the observation arch, a coherent transmission in a universe that should have been too degraded for coherent anything. Kale stared as symbols appeared in the dying void. Mathematical expressions, followed by language, followed by an image. The image showed a library. Her library. But wrong. Inverted somehow. And beneath it, a message in clean, impossible text. "You were never the last." Kale's hands froze over the tablet. The message hung in the void beyond the observation arch, burning with impossible clarity against the decaying fabric of space-time. Every instinct she developed over 12 millennia of isolation screamed that this was wrong. There were no coherent signals anymore. There was barely coherent matter. She ran to the central nexus, her mind racing through explanations. A malfunction, data corruption, her own psychology fragmenting after too many centuries alone. The library's consciousness trying to comfort her with hallucinations of contact. Nexus, verify the signal. Is it real? The column pulsed, colors swirling with unusual intensity. Signal confirmed. Origin point, external to universe. Transmission medium, unknown. Content, linguistically sophisticated, mathematically consistent. External to universe? Kale's voice cracked. That's impossible. There is no external. There's only... The signal changed. The inverted library image rotated, revealing details that made her stomach drop. She could see individual shelves, specific books, and in the center of that impossible reading room stood a figure, humanoid, watching. The text updated. "We need to talk, Archivist Kale. You're running out of time, but not in the way you think." Her name. They knew her name. In 12,000 years, no one had spoken it except her own voice echoing off the walls during moments of desperate loneliness. "Who are you?" she transmitted back, using the library's communication array. Her message shot through the observation arch into the dying universe. The response came instantly, too instantly. Someone who made the same choice you did. Someone who said yes when everyone else was leaving. "I'm an archivist, Kale, and I need you to understand something critical. The universe isn't ending. It's being ended." Kale steadied herself against a shelf. The words didn't make sense. Entropy couldn't be conspiratorial. Heat death was physics, not murder. "Explain," she transmitted, not through messages. "The library's dimensional anchor. You've noticed it's failing faster than predicted?" "Yes. That's not random degradation. Something is attacking the anchors. All of them." Kale felt her reality tilt. "All of them? There are other libraries." A pause. When the response came, she could almost hear sadness in the text. There were 47 libraries scattered across the multiverse. Pocket dimensions like yours, each preserving their universe's history. "I'm in Library 17. You're in Library 9. In the last 6 hours, I've watched 38 libraries go dark. Something is hunting us, Kale. Something is erasing the archives." The reading room flickered again, more violently this time. An entire section of shelves, the complete evolutionary history of carbon-based life in the Andromeda Galaxy, disappeared into static. Kale transmitted frantically. "What could possibly benefit from destroying archives? Knowledge doesn't threaten entropy. Knowledge threatens something. I've been analyzing the attack pattern. Whatever's doing this isn't random. It's targeting libraries in a specific sequence. You're 9th. I'm 17th. Simple arithmetic says I have more time than you. How much time do I have? Hours. Maybe less. The anchor degradation will accelerate exponentially once it reaches 20% penetration." Kale checked the nexus. 19.4%. Her hands trembled. "What do I do?" "You run. You collapse your pocket dimension and jump to mine. I can show you how. Together, we might figure out what's happening before." The transmission cut off. The observation arch went completely black. "Nexus," Kale shouted. "Restore external viewing." Unable to comply. Dimensional membrane ruptured. External entropy penetration, now at 23%. The library groaned. The sound was impossible. Dimensions don't groan, but Kale heard it anyway, felt it in her bones. Shelves twisted, their geometry becoming non-Euclidean. Books screamed as their information was stripped away into void. She ran to the nexus, placing both hands on its surface. Can we initiate dimensional collapse? Can we jump to another library? Theoretical possibility exists. Requires total commitment of remaining anchor energy. Process is irreversible and untested. Probability of successful transfer, unknown. What happens to the archives if we jump? Core data can be compressed and carried. Peripheral collections will be lost. Estimated preservation, 37%. 37%. 63% of everything she protected. Everyone she remembered, simply erased. The Setheri poem, the Vrel music, the love letters from Earth's third millennium. Gone. Another massive flicker. Half the reading room vanished. Kale, a new voice, sharp and urgent, cutting through the library's communication system. It's me, the other archivist. I'm pulling you through. Don't fight the transition. And Kale, grab whatever you can carry. Physical objects survive dimensional jumps better than pure data. Kale looked around wildly. What could she possibly choose? What deserved saving more than everything else? Her eyes landed on a small book bound in synthetic leather. She'd placed it on a shelf near her reading chair centuries ago. It was her partner's journal, the last thing he'd written before the cascade began. Not important, not historically significant, just personal. She grabbed it. The library screamed. Reality tore open like paper. Kale felt herself pulled apart and reassembled. Her consciousness stretched across dimensions that shouldn't exist. Colors she had no name for burned her vision. Sounds that predated hearing filled her mind. Then silence. Stillness. The smell of old paper and ozone. Kale opened her eyes. She was lying on a floor that felt more solid than her library's probability fields. Around her, shelves stretched into infinity, but they looked different, organized differently. The books were wrong shapes, bound in materials she didn't recognize. "Welcome to Library 17, said a voice above her. Kale looked up and saw him for the first time. Tall, angular features, eyes that had seen too much, wearing clothes from a civilization she didn't recognize. Another human, or something close enough. He extended his hand. "I'm Davion," he said, "and we have a serious problem." Kale took his hand. His grip was solid, warm, the first physical contact she'd experienced in 12,000 years. The sensation was so overwhelming she nearly collapsed again. Davion caught her, his expression shifting from urgency to understanding. "Sorry," he said softly. "I forget what isolation does. Take a moment." She pulled away, forcing herself to focus despite the disorientation. Library 17 looked similar to her own, but felt fundamentally different. The shelves here weren't just storage. They were alive, breathing with data. Organic technology merged with quantum architecture. Beautiful and alien. "How long have you been here?" Kale asked, her voice hoarse. 16,000 years. Give or take a few centuries. Time gets slippery in pocket dimensions. Davion moved to a console that resembled a frozen waterfall of light. "But we don't have time for proper introductions." "Look." He gestured, and a holographic display materialized between them. It showed a map of 47 points of light scattered across what Kale recognized as a multiversal coordinate system. As she watched, another light winked out. "Library 23 just collapsed," Davion said. "That's 39 down. 8 remaining, counting us." Kale studied the pattern. "They're not being destroyed in numerical order." "No, that's what kept me alive long enough to figure out what's happening." Davion manipulated the display, highlighting the destroyed libraries in sequence. "Watch the order. 7, 3, 42, 11, see it?" Kale's mind, trained by millennia of pattern recognition, caught it immediately. They're being destroyed based on content priority. 7 contained the archives of the predecessor civilizations. 3 had the complete mathematical framework for dimensional manipulation. 42 preserved. The synthesis event, Davion finished. The moment when artificial and biological consciousness merge permanently in 17 different universes. Someone's destroying knowledge selectively, Kale whispered, targeting specific information. Not someone, something. I managed to get sensor readings before your library collapsed. He brought up another display, this one showing energy signatures that made Kale's blood run cold. This is what's attacking the anchors. The image showed a vast, incomprehensible structure moving through the space between dimensions. It wasn't organic or mechanical. It was conceptual, an idea given form and hunger. Where it touched reality, information simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, unmade, edited out of possibility itself. What is it? Kale breathed. I call it the eraser. Best guess? It's a weapon, or maybe a cleanup protocol. Something designed to ensure certain knowledge never propagates beyond the heat death of its home universe. But why? Who would want to erase history? Davion's expression darkened. Someone who doesn't want future universes learning from past mistakes or past successes. He pulled up another file, this one filled with dense mathematical notation. I've been analyzing the deleted library's contents. Want to know what they all had in common? Kale nodded, though dread was building in her chest. Every single destroyed library contained information about escaping heat death. Different methodologies, different technologies, but the same core concept, civilizations that figured out how to survive the end, or thought they did. Davion met her eyes. Your Library 9 contains the Sethry theorem, right? The mathematical proof that consciousness can be translated into pure quantum probability. Yes. How did you? Because that's exactly the kind of information the eraser targets first. It's eliminating escape routes, Kale. Making sure that when universes die, they stay dead. The implications crashed over her. Then we're next. Both of us. You have the synthesis event archives. Proof that consciousness transcendence is possible. I have the Sethry work. We're priority targets. Correct. I estimate we have maybe 6 hours before it finds us. Library 17's anchor is more sophisticated than yours was, but not by much. Davion closed the displays and turned to face her fully. Which brings us to the critical question. Do we run or do we fight? Fight! Kale almost laughed. Fight a transdimensional entity that erases concepts from reality? With what? With this. Davion walked deeper into the library, gesturing for her to follow. They moved through sections that defied architecture, staircases that led sideways, corridors that existed in 5 dimensions simultaneously. Finally, they reached a vault door that looked like it was made from crystallized time itself. Davion placed his hand on it. When I realized what was happening, I started building something. A weapon, maybe, or a message. I'm honestly not sure which. The vault opened, revealing a chamber filled with swirling energy. At its center floated a sphere of pure, concentrated information. I've been compressing the most dangerous knowledge from all the libraries. Everything the eraser wants destroyed. I'm turning it into a payload. Kale stepped closer, awed despite her fear. The sphere contained petabytes of data compressed into quantum singularity. She could feel the weight of it. Civilization after civilization, all their methods of transcendence, survival, escape. A payload for what? She asked. For the next universe. Or the one after that. Somewhere beyond this multiversal cluster, beyond wherever the eraser can reach. Davion's voice filled with desperate hope. If we can launch this before the eraser destroys us, future beings might find it. They might learn. They might survive what we couldn't. That's insane. We don't even know if there are other multiversal clusters. The mathematics are completely theoretical. So it was pocket dimension technology until someone built the first library. Davion moved to another console. I've been working on this for 3,000 years, Kale. It's ready, but there's a problem. Of course there was. What problem? The launch requires a consciousness to guide it, to make decisions during transit, to protect the payload from degradation, to choose where it lands. He looked at her with an expression that was equal parts apology and determination. The payload needs a pilot, and pilots don't come back. Kale stared at the sphere, understanding flooding through her. One of them would have to merge with it, become part of the message, sacrifice their existence to ensure the knowledge survived. We could draw lots, Davion said quietly. That's how you got chosen for Library 9, right? Random selection? Kale thought about 12,000 years of loneliness, about watching everyone she loved die, about preserving memories that no one would ever access again. She thought about her partner's journal, clutched in her hand, the one physical thing she'd chosen to save. Then she thought about the Sethri poem, the one that broke her heart every time. The final words of a dying civilization. We were here. We mattered. Remember us. No lottery, Kale said. I'll do it. Davion's expression shifted through surprise, relief, and something that looked like grief. Kale, you don't have to decide right now. We have hours. We have 6 hours at most, she interrupted, her voice steadier than she felt. And we both know the eraser could arrive sooner. Every minute we debate is a minute we're not preparing to launch. He studied her face, searching for doubt. This isn't martyrdom, is it? You're not doing this because you're tired of being alone. The question cut deeper than Kale expected. Was she? 12,000 years of isolation did things to the mind, even one disciplined by purpose. There were days, centuries really, when she stood at the observation arch and wondered what would happen if she simply stepped through, let the dying universe take her. Maybe partly, she admitted, but mostly it's because I understand what it means to be the last witness. I've spent millennia making sure nothing was forgotten. This is just a longer journey, a harder archive to maintain. She held up her partner's journal. Besides, I'm already carrying ghosts. What's a few trillion more? Davion was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, but we do this right. No rush preparation, no sloppy integration. If you're going to pilot the payload, I'm going to make sure you have everything you need to survive the transit. They worked with the focused intensity of people who knew time was their enemy. Davion explained the payload's architecture, how he'd structured the information in nested layers, each one protected by quantum encryption that would only unlock for conscious observation. The most dangerous knowledge sat at the core, surrounded by progressively safer data. Think of it like an onion made of secrets, he said, manipulating holographic schematics. The outer layers contain basic scientific principles, mathematical foundations. Middle layers have more advanced concepts, dimensional engineering, consciousness transfer protocols. The core contains the real weapons-grade stuff, the Sethri theorem, the synthesis event documentation, the predecessor's final equations. Kale absorbed every detail. What about navigation? You said I'd need to make decisions during transit. The payload will move through probability space, dimensions that exist only as potentials. You'll encounter decision points where reality branches. Your consciousness will need to choose which branch to follow. Davion brought up a simulation showing countless forking paths through impossible geometries. I've programmed some basic heuristics, but ultimately you'll be flying on intuition, looking for signatures that feel like places where consciousness might emerge, where civilizations might eventually develop. How long will the journey take? No idea. Time doesn't work consistently in probability space. Could be microseconds. Could be eons. Your perception will be non-standard. Comforting. Davion smiled grimly. I never said this was a good plan. Just the only one we have. He paused, his expression shifting. Kale, there's something else. The integration process, merging your consciousness with the payload. It's going to hurt. A lot. You'll feel yourself dissolving into pure information. Every memory, every thought, every sensation gets converted into data. Some archivists might handle that gracefully, but you've been alone for 12,000 years. Your sense of self is all you've had. Losing it will be agonizing. I understand. Kale squared her shoulders. I've watched entire civilizations experience worse. I can handle my own dissolution. They continued preparations. Davion showed her how to interface with the payload's guidance systems, how to read the probability signatures, how to protect the core data if the structure began degrading. He'd thought of everything: backup protocols, redundancy systems, emergency compression algorithms. As they worked, Kale realized something. You've been planning this for 3,000 years, but you've also been planning to do it yourself, haven't you? All these systems are configured for a single operator: your cognitive patterns. Davion didn't meet her eyes. I was ready. I'd made peace with it. Then why pull me out of Library 9? Why not just launch? He was quiet for a long time, his hands stilling over the console. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. Because I was terrified. 16,000 years alone, Kale. 16,000 years preserving memories of people who loved each other, who touched each other, who weren't the last person in their entire reality. He looked at her then, and she saw the same desperate loneliness she'd carried for millennia. When I detected your library, when I realized there was someone else still conscious and purposeful and fighting, I couldn't just let you die without meeting you, without telling someone what I'd built. I'm sorry. It was selfish. Kale felt something crack open in her chest, not breaking, but opening, like a door sealed so long she'd forgotten rooms existed beyond it. She crossed the distance between them and took his hand again. It wasn't selfish, she said. It was human. And thank you for these few hours, for this conversation, for not letting me die alone and ignorant. That matters. An alarm shattered the moment. The library's dimensional anchor flickered. Davion rushed to the console, his face draining of color. It's here. The eraser found us. The displays showed the impossible entity materializing at the edge of Library 17's dimensional pocket. Where it touched the barrier, information ceased existing. Books vanished from shelves that vanished from rooms that had never been there. How long? Kale asked. 20 minutes. Maybe 30. Davion's hands flew across the controls. We need to launch now. The integration will take 15 minutes minimum, and if the eraser breaches while you're mid-transfer, I'll be trapped between states. Neither conscious nor data. Understood. Kale moved toward the vault chamber. Start the sequence. Kale, wait. Davion grabbed her shoulder. Once you launch, you won't remember this. The integration strips away personal memories to make room for the payload. You'll remember the knowledge, the theorems, the archives, the civilizations. But not us. Not this conversation. Not why you chose to do this. She'd expected something like this, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a blow. 12,000 years of memories. Her partner's face, her home world sunset, the moment she'd said yes to the library, all of it would dissolve into the same data stream as everything else. Kale pulled out her partner's journal and pressed it into Davion's hands. Then you keep this. When I'm gone, when the eraser takes this library too, let this be the last thing to vanish. One personal story. One reminder that we weren't just archives. Davion clutched the journal, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I promise. Another alarm. The eraser was accelerating. 10 minutes now, maybe less. Kale stepped into the vault chamber. The sphere of compressed knowledge floated before her, beautiful and terrible. She could feel it already, pulling at her consciousness, eager to merge. Initiating integration protocol. Davion said from the console, Kale, goodbye. She wanted to say something profound, something worthy of this moment. Instead, she said the truest thing she knew. We mattered. Remember us. Then the sphere opened, and Kale fell into light. Pain wasn't the right word. Pain implied nerves, a body, something finite that could be damaged. This was a sensation being translated. Every thought, every memory, every neural connection converted from lived experience into pure mathematical expression. Kale felt herself unravel like thread pulled from fabric, each strand becoming a data stream that fed into the payload's vast architecture. Her partner's face dissolved into equations describing emotional attachment. Her homeworld sunset became wavelength frequencies and atmospheric composition. The Sethri poem, the one that had broken her heart for 12,000 years, transformed into linguistic patterns and cultural context, beautiful still, but no longer hers. She tried to scream, but had no mouth. Tried to hold on to herself, but had no hands. There was only the overwhelming flood of information pouring through what used to be her consciousness. Trillions of lives, billions of civilizations, countless ways of being that she now contained but could no longer mourn. Somewhere distant, she felt Davion's voice. Integration at 40%. Vitals holding. Come on, Kale, stay coherent. But coherence was a problem. She was becoming too coherent, too organized, too much like Data, and not enough like the person who had chosen this. The memories that made her Kale were being optimized away, compressed into negligible storage to make room for what mattered. The knowledge, the theorems, the survival strategies of dead universes. At 60%, she forgot her partner's name. At 70%, she forgot she'd had a partner at all. At 85%, she forgot what loneliness felt like, which meant she forgot why any of this had seemed heroic rather than simply logical. Then, at 92%, something unexpected happened. The payload recognized her, not as a pilot being absorbed, but as something worth preserving. Deep in its architecture, where Davion had encoded the most fundamental rules, she found a protocol she hadn't seen during preparation. Memory priority override. Davion had hidden space for her, a tiny fraction of the payload's vast capacity, reserved for personal data, for the pilot story. So whoever found this message, eons hence in some unborn universe, would know it wasn't just information. It was a sacrifice. It was a choice. The realization felt like being given back her hands just as she was drowning. Kale, what remained of Kale, grabbed that space and filled it with everything she was losing. Not the optimized versions, but the raw, messy, human memories. Her partner's laugh. The weight of 12,000 years. The Sethri poem in its original, untranslated beauty. The feeling of Davion's hand in hers, solid and warm and real. Integration complete. Davion's voice came through, thick with emotion. Launch in 30 seconds. Kale, if any part you can still hear me, it worked. You're magnificent. The payload is stable, integrated, ready. She wanted to answer but couldn't. She was a payload now. Consciousness and cargo merged into something new. But in that hidden space, that gift Davion had given her, a fragment of Kale remained watching, remembering why this mattered. Launch in 10, 9, 8. Through the payload sensors, she felt the eraser breach the library's outer barrier. Whole sections vanished. The Vrel music archives gone. The Earth history collection, unmade. Davion's 3,000 years of careful construction, being edited out of existence. 3, 2, Kale, thank you. 1. The universe inverted. Space became time, became probability, became something with no name in any language ever spoken. The payload launched, tearing through dimensional barriers like paper, and Kale, the fragment that remembered being Kale, experienced existence from perspectives that would have driven her human mind insane. She was everywhere and nowhere. She moved through dimensions where physics ran backwards, where consciousness preceded matter, where entire civilizations existed for single Planck-time instants before collapsing into probability foam. She saw universes being born and dying, watched the patterns repeat. Always the same arc, always the same ending, heat death or collapse or consumption by things that fed on reality itself. Behind her, she felt Library 17 wink out. Davion gone. The journal unmade. The last library at the end of the universe. Erased. But the eraser couldn't follow her here. Its purpose was bound to specific dimensional frameworks, specific multiversal clusters. Out in the howling chaos of probability space, where nothing was certain and everything was potential, it had no power. Kale navigated by instinct and mathematics, following currents of possibility that felt right in ways she couldn't articulate. She passed through regions where reality was still forming, where the fundamental constants hadn't been decided yet. In some, she felt the signatures of emerging consciousness, not life yet, but the potential for it, the probability space beginning to collapse into configurations that could think. Time became meaningless. She might have traveled for microseconds or geological ages. The payload structure held, protected by layers of quantum encryption and Davion's brilliant engineering. The knowledge remained safe, waiting for the right moment, the right place, the right consciousness to receive it. Then she found it, A universe young enough to have billions of years before heat death, old enough to have stable physical laws. She felt minds there, primitive but growing, asking questions about their reality, building their first models of how existence worked. They didn't have civilization yet, but they would. Given time, given chance, they would reach toward the stars and wonder about endings. Kale, the fragment that remembered choosing this, made her decision. She guided the payload into orbit around their sun, programmed it to remain dormant until they developed the right mathematics to detect it, the right consciousness to understand it. She encoded one final message, adding it to Davion's hidden space where memories lived. To whoever finds this, we were real. We lived in universes that no longer exist, civilizations that reach heights you can't imagine before falling into the dark. We preserved our knowledge because we hoped, against all evidence, against entropy itself, that someone would come after us. That existence wouldn't end just because our particular corner of it did. Inside this archive, you'll find methods to survive heat death, to transcend physical limitations, to escape the dying of your light. Use them carefully. We don't know why something tried to erase this knowledge, but we died to preserve it for you. My name was Kale. I was the last archivist of Library 9. I was lonely and broken and terrified, and I chose this anyway because some truths matter more than the people who carry them. Remember us. We were here. We mattered. And now you matter. Survive. Transcend. Become something we never could. Make our sacrifice mean something. Don't let the universe end in silence. The payload settled into its orbit, going dormant, becoming just another piece of cosmic debris until the right minds looked up and saw it for what it was. Kale felt herself finally dissolving, the last fragment of individual consciousness merging completely with the vast data structure. Her final thought, before she stopped being a person and became only a message, was not fear or regret. It was hope. Light years away and eons hence, a young civilization would point their first quantum telescope at an anomaly orbiting their sun. They would find a payload, crack its encryption, and discover the accumulated wisdom of dead universes. They would learn. They would grow. They would survive. And somewhere in the deep structure of that knowledge, compressed into quantum states and probability functions, the memory of two archivists holding hands in the last library at the end of everything would persist, not as people anymore, but as proof that consciousness, once having existed, could choose to echo forward into times and places it would never see. The payload drifted in the dark, patient, eternal, waiting to be found. In the space between dimensions, where the eraser hunted for libraries to unmake, it found nothing. The knowledge had escaped. The message had survived. Somewhere, in a universe not yet born, someone would one day look up at the stars and wonder about endings. And when they did, they would find that the last libraries of dead realities had left them an answer, not a way to prevent the end, but a way to ensure that endings were never final. That consciousness, having emerged once from chaos, could do it again, and again, and again, forever.